Elizabeth Warren wants to make you doing your taxes easier. According to Vox, Senator Elizabeth Warren had introduced a bill today that would make doing taxes not only easy, but free for most Americans. Oh, that's amazing. Now, this bill is called the Tax Filing Simplification Act of 2016. And what it would do is that it would essentially order the IRS to create a free online tax preparation and filing service that is comparable to something like TurboTax or other programs you have to pay for. But it also bans the agency from working with TurboTax and other companies. Oh, so no competition right there, right? So just creating an online free preparation and filing service. That's cool. Okay, I like it. Vox explains. Currently, the IRS collaborates with tax software providers, mainly Intuit, which sells TurboTax, on what's called the Free File program. The program is supposed to provide free access to commercial software for low and medium income taxpayers. But because the eligibility rules are so complicated and the system is so poorly advertised, only about 3% of taxpayers use it. And the National Taxpayer Advocate has repeatedly called for the program's abolition. Warren's bill would kill that program for good. But it goes further. Best of all, it establishes what is called a return-free filing option that would send millions of Americans with simple tax situations a pre-prepared tax return, which they can submit unchanged if they like. Hey, that actually sounds kind of nice. I don't like doing taxes. I also hate paying someone to do my taxes. Despite the fact that my wife and I actually really like our tax preparer, I just don't like paying taxes. I'm a cheap motherfucker. And I hate paying people to do my taxes. I don't want to do that. I would like to do it for free. That would be nice. And having a pre-prepared tax form sent to you, where you don't even have to do anything, kind of nice. Because think about it. You get all the information sent to you anyway. Through W-2s, W-4s, 1099s. Well, the government already has all that information. Why can't they just put it in the box? I like things easy. What can I say? Now, as I said, this sounds nice. Now, Warren isn't the first person that's actually to propose this. Senator Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire and Representative Bill Foster both also have similar bills this Congress. So look, I love how the Democrats are actually pushing this. It makes sense. And we actually know how it works. Well, how do we know that it works? Because it's already been done in other places. In fact, there are countries like Denmark, Sweden, Estonia, Chile, and Spain. They already offer pre-populated returns to their citizens. And in the United Kingdom, Germany, and Japan, they have exact enough tax withholding procedures that most people don't even have to file returns at all, whether or not they're pre-populated. You don't have to do a goddamn thing and your taxes are paid. You either get a return or a slip of how much you owe. And it's not just other countries. Even California has a voluntary return-free filing program called Ready Return for its income taxes. So it works, and it's easy. Well, who the fuck doesn't like easy? Well, I'll get to that in a bit. But first, here's who supports the bill so far. You've got Senator Jeanne Shaheen, Al Franken, Sheldon Whitehouse, Tom Udall, Tammy Baldwin, Ed Markey, and of course, presidential candidate Bernie Sanders, all signing on to this bill. Awesome. And look, this isn't even the first time it's actually came up. This is actually kind of a popular idea. And it was touted by first Austin Goolsbee. Not the first guy, but he's the first one on this list. He's a former chief economist for the Obama administration. Now, back in 2006, he designed a proposal called the Simple Return that would provide pre-populated returns for everyone that doesn't itemize their deductions. Now, who itemizes their deductions? Well, not 70% of the American population. Only about 30% of people actually do that. And it could be extended to many itemizers. For example, mortgage lenders already send out 1098 tax forms listing interest paid over the year, and the IRS could mandate that charities do the same for tax-exempt contributions. So you could expand on this and make it easy even for people who itemize deductions. Awesome. But it's not just Libby liberals that tout this idea. Here you have Ronald fucking Reagan talking about this back in 1985. He said, quote, "We envision a system where more than half of us would not even have to fill out a return. We call it the return-free system, and it would be totally voluntary, just like this one. If you decided to participate, you would automatically receive your refund or a letter explaining any additional taxes you owe. Should you disagree with this figure, you would be free to fill out your taxes using the regular form. We believe most Americans would go for the long form or the short form to no form." Here you've got Ronald motherfucking Reagan, who is more progressive on this issue. Amazing. And I say progressive because this proposal would actually seriously help low-income Americans eligible for things like the Earned Income Tax Credit and child tax credits. Now, those are refundable and offer substantial benefits to low-income taxpayers who file. However, the problem with these programs, these tax credits, is that a lot of people don't know if they're eligible, or they're not even aware of this. In fact, 20% of the people who are eligible for the EITC, they end up not getting it. And a big fraction of returns contain errors, sometimes because of the complexity of the tax credit itself, or errors by commercial tax preparers. Sometimes H&R Block fucks it up. Sometimes TurboTax turbo fucks you. So, sometimes that happens. Automatic filing would actually stop that. It would be more efficient. It would actually be more correct. And also would provide EITC payments to many of that 20% that didn't get them. Why? Because they already know if you're eligible or not. Because they fill it in for you. So, and it would spare taxpayers from doing complex calculations that lead to getting turbo fucked. I like that word. So look, hey, this is a great idea, right? It works in other countries. It solves a big headache. And, it can even prevent errors. So why don't we have it? That's the best question of all. And you already know the answer to it. Why we don't have it? Well, in order to find that out, you have to follow the money. In this case, money from tax preparers like Intuit. Now, in 2013, ProPublica's Liz Day wrote an expose on just how much and how hard Intuit has lobbied to stop this plan from being implemented. They've cock-blocked this a couple of times. For example, in 2007, there was a bill to limit return-free filing introduced by a pair of representatives. You have Eric Cantor, who was the conservative House Majority Leader, and Zoe Lofgren. Now, Intuit's political committee and employees have contributed to both Eric Cantor and his leadership PAC, receiving about $26,100 in the past 5 years from the company's PAC and employees. And in the last 2 years, the Intuit PAC and employees donated $26,000 to Lofgren. That's where you're getting this, right? Not only that, but in 2005, in California, when they launched their pilot program called Ready Return, as I had already mentioned exists, Intuit spent more than $3 million in overall lobbying and political contributions in the state. According to Dennis J. Ventry, Jr., a professor at the UC Davis School of Law, who specializes in tax policy and legal ethics. And they haven't stopped lobbying. In 2014, Day reported that Intuit was involved in an astroturfing effort meant to manufacture the appearance of a grassroots opposition to automatic filing. Once again, who in real life, in reality, is opposed to easier taxes? Nobody. That's why you have to astroturf. Nobody says, yes, make filing my taxes harder. No one out there is saying that. Except for this group, Intuit, this company that makes money off these programs, basically making a fake campaign to make people think that there are actually people out there that want to make filing their taxes harder, because no one on the planet wants to do harder taxes. It's amazing. But they spent $13 million lobbying Congress from 2011 to 2015, with 41 lobbying reports relating to taxes in 2015 alone. And here's what's funny. They don't call it lobbying. They call it enhancing voluntary compliance. Right. Okay. There you go. Now, in this fight, Intuit and other tax prep companies have had an ally. That ally? Grover Norquist. You know who Grover Norquist is, right? He's the anti-tax guy. Now, why would he be against making taxes simpler? He doesn't like the complexity of taxes, right? And there are also people like Ted Cruz, for example, that want to make your taxes so easy and simple that they fit on a postcard. Well, if you make doing them free and easy, people might not actually hate doing their taxes as much. And they might actually not mind doing their taxes or paying their taxes. And maybe might be open to tax increases. You don't know. It's possible. Well, Grover Norquist doesn't like that. That actually goes against his whole reason for existing. To get rid of all taxes and shrink government to down to the size where he could drown it in a fucking bathtub. To that end, he supports making your taxes more complicated to do, so you'll actually hate doing them more. And once you hate, doing your taxes, you might actually be more prone or open to voting for anti-tax politicians who want to get rid of taxes and essentially privatize government in order to make a profit. He's literally in favor of creating a problem in order to support a solution, his solution. It's what these assholes do. They break the system and then complain it's broken, so we'll be okay with them breaking it apart further and then selling off the pieces to private industry. If you hate doing taxes, and I think most of us do, well, you've got to know who's in favor of who. Now, some Republicans, like Reagan, were in favor of this. And even a lot of Democrats are too. Because they actually wanted to make it easier for you to file your taxes. But you also have assholes like Grover Norquist and Eric Cantor, who are bought by tax prep companies in order to fuck you over. In order to make legislation or prevent other legislation from coming through to fuck you over. To make it harder for you to do your taxes in order to fit their own ends. You've got to know which side you're on. In order to know what side you're on, you've got to follow the money.